Hey everyone, I'm David Bombal, coming to you from Oxford in the United Kingdom, and I'm really excited to have Dewan Lightfoot on the call with me today. Dewan is famous not only on YouTube, but also he's the creator of the Lab Everyday movement, which has impacted thousands of people's lives. So I'm really happy to have Dewan on the call. He's also got a very inspirational story about how he got into networking. And to top it all off, he's got a great announcement, or a very exciting announcement to make during this call. So I'm going to have to publish this very quickly, but very exciting. So Dewan, welcome. And it's great to have you on the call, man.
Hey, thanks, David. I appreciate this opportunity. I thank you for having me on the call. I admire what you do,
Thank
and
you.
this is going to be fun.
Oh, definitely. So, Dewan, let's start off just briefly, who you are, a little bit about your background, and then I would like really quickly to get to this announcement, and then we can come back to sort of your background.
Okay. Well, Dewan Lightfoot, for those of you that follow me on YouTube, a YouTube content creator. I like to help people get into technology, whether it's a network engineer, system administrator, whatever you decide to be. I like to kind of guide you there as far as providing those resources. I've been in IT since the year 2000. That's actually when I went in the military, spent 6 years doing that. And then it's been a journey to get to where I am today. Which, I guess that's kind of the announcement, David. So,
yeah, so you've told me about this announcement coming, so I'm really keen to hear what it is. So can you share that, and then we'll talk a little bit more about your background?
Yes. So I kind of took a break from YouTube and everything after my interview with Cisco, which is back in May.
Yeah.
My wife had quit her job, and for like 4 years previous, she wasn't working. It was just me. And that kind of drove me to get in my CCNA and improving my life. So I was back at that point again. And during that time, of the Cisco interview, I was a system administrator. I had been a system admin for like 3 years. And a lot of people didn't realize that on YouTube, but I was a sysadmin talking about Cisco. And it never really bothered me until, the Cisco interview. It's like, well, this is kind of awkward. I'm a CCNP and I'm talking about Cisco. So I set out to become a network engineer because I had never been one previously.
Yeah.
I've done the role pretty much, designing networks and everything as a network technician, installing VSSs and standing up networks, but I've never had the title. So I'm here now. As of July 16th, I became a network design engineer 3, which is a fancy title, but I'm tier 2 support basically for a very large company.
Congratulations. So if I remember right, you were on the Helpdesk for like 6 years, and then you were doing system administration until like, what is it, about less than a month ago? And now You've become officially a network engineer, even though you were doing that previously, but you've got the title now. So congratulations, man.
Thank you. Yes, I spent 6 years on the Helpdesk, David.
Wow. You're a brave man.
I actually love the position. Coming from where I'm from, making $20 an hour was good money. Getting out the military, making $20 an hour, and from my understanding of life at that point, was very maintainable. It wasn't like, hey, you needed to do more, because this was like good where I'm from. And it didn't really set in until my family grew, and things changed in my life. Then it's like, hey, I need to do more, but I don't really have the qualifications. Let me get some more certifications and start improving my life, Yeah,
so, I mean, stories like yours I find amazing. It's so inspirational to hear, where guys have come from and where they're going. And I mean, your story hasn't ended. This is just some point in the journey, but it's an exciting point. But you've shared a little bit, if you don't mind, can you share sort of your background so that other people perhaps in difficult situations, or who feel that, they're stuck in a dead-end job, they're working in, retail or in like a restaurant or something, and they feel that they can't make it. Can you share a bit about your background, about, sort of where you were and how it changed when you got involved with Cisco and the like?
Sure, David. So I'm from Canton, Ohio. If you follow American football, that's the Football Hall of Fame city. And when I was a kid, it was about 80,000 people in the inner city,
Yeah,
and there was a very large steel manufacturing presence in the city. So people were having these factory jobs, living a good life.
yeah,
Fast forward 20 years, and those jobs are no longer available. Those companies have since left, but the people are still there. Well, half the people are there. It's probably about 40,000, 50,000 people there now since I was a kid,
yeah.
and the opportunity left for a lot of people because of those jobs left. And so my goal, is to kind of help people from that type of environment get in tech or understand what's available in information technology, not just in network engineering or in system administration, but also like DevOps or development or consulting or being a business analyst. There's so many different avenues that you can actually take to create your own lane, even in a small town, because you can work remote, you
Yeah.
can relocate, you can drive 50 miles, whatever you have to do to get there. It's possible.
Yes, I'm assuming you're not one of those fortunate types who had a trust fund, who inherited a lot of money, who comes from a rich family. So, can you tell us, sort of how did you bootstrap yourself to get where you are today?
Yeah, I definitely didn't come from that. But I did come from a loving family. I don't want to say like my family didn't support me.
Of course
I
not. Yeah.
I have a very, very, very close family. Um, but at the age of 18, which I was 18 in high school, I realized, I wanted to play football for Ohio State, but that wasn't possible because, I wasn't getting a scholarship. I wasn't that good. I was good, but not that good. And my mom definitely couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
So, and that's no shot to my mom. I love my mom. She did her best. She worked two jobs at a time just to make sure that I could have a good living. But I decided rather than put strain on my family to go to the Air Force. And so I spent 6 years in the Air Force. And that's how I learned my technical skills.
So you were doing in the Air Force. You were doing like networking, or was it computer-based stuff? What were you doing in the Air Force?
When I started in the Air Force, I spent about 3 months on the help desk, and I moved off of that real quick because I was able to work with customers and understand the technology at the time. It was Windows NT,
Yeah.
and so they moved me to desktop support, which that was fun doing Windows NT 4.0. And then there was a SAN migration to Windows 2000, and that's when I became kind of like a sysadmin. And and actually, that's when I first discovered Cisco too, because there was this guy named Pat. He was like this rock star that knew servers, knew networking, had his CCNA back in 2000, just this all around superstar. But there was no Google back then as
Yeah.
far as being able to
No
find
YouTube.
information. Yeah, you basically had one guy that knew everything, and it was Pat. Just happened to be the type of person that share information, but he was so busy and had so much responsibility that if you can get that time, you had to take notes. So I had learned back then and started taking notes and to value someone's time if they gave it to me.
Yeah.
So
So let me just see if I heard that right. It was 6 years in the military. Is that right?
yes, sir. 6 years in the military.
And I can. We were joking earlier. You calling me sir shows me the
Ah.
background. I'm going to
Sorry,
call you
David.
Your Royal Highness. No, that's fine. So 6 years in the military, you had learned a bit about various IT systems, and then you
Right.
left the military. And what happened then?
Yeah, so I left the military. I did a lot of great things. I spent 5 years overseas, actually, um, 3 in Germany, 2 in Holland, some remote locations. It was great.
Wow.
Um, but when I got out the military, it was probably the worst time to actually get out the military. 2007.
Wow. Bad time.
Yeah, it was a bad time because I didn't see what was coming with the market, the job market, just the whole recession, everything. But I should have moved to a place like DC because I had a clearance and I probably could have moved into a position, transition better. But moving to Kansas City, Missouri, it was a kind of a hard transition
Yeah.
because my clearance wasn't valuable back then in this location, and my skill set. I didn't transition it well because I did so many things in the military. I didn't really prepare my resume appropriately. Like I said, online searching Google, it wasn't what it is today to be able to have the resources that are available. But it took me about 5 months to find a job. And when I did, that's when I landed my help desk position and ended up staying there for 6 years.
Wow. So do you have any sort of advice for people, what's the correct term, military veterans or people leaving the military? What would you advise them to do before they leave?
Save money.
Save money. Good one.
Save money. If you're in the military, save money. A lot of especially if you're going there, you don't have a family, you don't need to spend money. They provide you food, they provide you place to stay. Save money because you never know what tomorrow holds. And having money available will make your life, will give you more options. I would say that. The second thing is to already start coming up with a plan of what you want to do.
Yeah.
Whether it's been 4 years or 6 years, already start mapping out what you want to do and preparing for it because they pay for college. So go ahead and if you want to go to college or certifications, start networking or whatever you want to do to make that happen. And then build relationships with people in the military because these people are going to transition. They're going to relocate. They may go to a base that you want to go to. And if you have a relationship with a commander or whoever, even though you may be just a private or an airman, still just being the professional and treating people how you want to be treated will go a long way in the long run. So
that's great advice. I think that applies to anyone, though. You've got to, what's that famous saying? If you don't have a goal, you're going to hit it every time. You've got to kind of have an idea where you're going and try and plan for that. It's not always easy. I think it's a lot easier today, as you said, because we've got Google, we've got YouTube. There's so many resources available these days. But something else you also said that's interesting is I don't know how to phrase it. I wouldn't say it a mistake, but you made the decision to move to like a place that wasn't a tech hub or a place where a big city, if you like.
Right.
So that seemed to also affect your chances when you got out. Is that right?
Yes. I didn't understand it. I was married at the time, and my ex-wife, she was from here, and so for me, like her family's cool. I love her family, so moving here just kind of made sense. There were more jobs here than where I'm from, so it wasn't like I wanted to move there. And moving to DC is a big city. I didn't really want to raise a family there, so Kansas City just kind of made sense. And it's since evolved to more of a tech hub than it was back then. It's really came a long way than what it was, but the recession really hit hard a lot of places in the States.
Yeah, agreed. So is that where you're based now, or have you moved?
I'm still here.
So in Kansas City, is that where you're based now?
Yes.
And with your new job, do you have to move or is it remote?
No, actually, I don't have to relocate at all. So it's not that far from where I live. It's pretty cool.
That's great.
It's great.
That's brilliant. Okay, so after the military, you spent 6 years on the help desk, and then I believe there was someone that inspired you to go into Cisco. I've heard that in other discussions you've had. Is that right?
Yes. With the Cisco, I mentioned Pat from being in the military. He was always that person that kind of drove me. And then I had another friend, my boy Kaz. He's actually a warrant officer in the Army, and he was like the person that, he's still in. He's as like his CCNP, CCNA security, and he was doing major things in the military. And it was kind of like, man, you know what? I can kind of do this too,
Yeah.
And it was like, I just attended this boot camp and took off from there.
So when did you get your CCNA?
I got my CCNA actually in 2015, July 2015.
And what's cool is I believe since then you've got CCNP and you're working on your security, or have you done that as well?
Yeah, it's funny about the CCNP because when I got my CCNA, and this was probably a bad decision, one of my many bad decisions throughout my career, but at that time I was a network technician at a company, and it was a very large local infrastructure, so a very large land. They had about 40 buildings, about 4,000 acres, and it's Yeah, and I was installing switches everywhere, just maintaining that network, SolarWinds, upgrading. Like I said, I stood up a VSS there. Um, I did a lot in that position, and I got my CCNA, and I felt like I needed more money. I had just had my son, and I left that position, which was probably a bad decision. But the knowledge I obtained there helped me pass my CCNP switch because I saw all I was doing, and I started looking at the CCNP. It's like, hey, I know this stuff, And so I went up getting it, and then the CCNP route, I pretty much studied the book. I did a lot of EIGRP, VRS in that position, so that kind of made sense. I didn't do any BGP, but there wasn't much BGP on the exam topics, so I was able to get through it. But I kind of should have stayed in that position, and I should have held off on my CCNP, although it did help me.
So I think the advice that you seem to be giving is you need to think carefully about where you're going and not just jump ship for more money in the short run. Is that kind of a lesson or takeaway?
It's definitely a lesson because you can jump ship for another position where you think you're getting more money and you're going to have more opportunity. But if you don't really research, sometimes a position, everything that glitters is not gold.
Yeah.
You could be going into a sinking ship per se, or you can go into a position that has a fancy title, but you're not building your skills, which is ultimately is going to leave you stagnant at that level or even set you back.
That's great advice. It's fantastic. So I've heard some other things online about you. You released a really cool video, which I'll link below here, how CCNA changed your life. Do you mind telling us about that? Because I get a lot of this, sorry, just to hop on this, but I get a lot of questions about, is CCNA really worth it today? Some guys will say it's not worth it. Some guys will say you have to have a degree. CCNA is a waste of time. What's your take on all of that?
Everybody has an opinion. But
I like that. I like that.
But until otherwise proven, the CCNA is always worth it. Until proven differently, the CCNA certification is always worth it. Now, how you market yourself once you get the CCNA certification is up to you. Where you're located, sometimes that's a factor. But either way, that certification, no matter where you go in America, is valued.
So how did it change your life? Sorry, go on. I interrupted you.
No. We're fine. Go ahead.
So I was just going to ask you, so how did it, can you give us a bit of your personal story? Like, so what was it like before you got your CCNA and then you got your CCNA and then what happened?
So I would say before I got the CCNA, my military, getting out the military, I was qualified for, let's say, mid-level. I was qualified for mid-level, but I didn't know how to market myself, and I didn't have any certifications. All I had was military experience, and I didn't go to a military town, so that didn't help me. But getting the CCNA, that moved me, I would say, to the next level. It says, okay, this Dewan is working towards something. Not only is he working towards something, but he has some years of experience behind him, and now that's marketable.
Definitely.
It shows that you're actively an active learner, and you can learn, and you're willing to learn, and you're willing to grow, and it adds value depending on what company you go to. They may be a Cisco partner or whatever, so having you on their team could be valuable to them just as well as you. Yeah,
it's good advice. I want to talk about lab every day, but before we talk about that, do you have any specific tips for someone who's struggling to get their CCNA?
Just keep going. There are no shortcuts.
Yeah.
There are no shortcuts. You may take a shortcut, but eventually it's going to show up. So what I would say is you may want to get it in 6 weeks or 10 days or whatever, but that experience doesn't come that fast. So just keep working at it. If it takes you 4 years to get it, once you get it, it will be like a journey that was well worth it. It's like that marathon that you walk, your toes fall off and everything, but you get to that finish line and it's like, I'm finally here, and it will pay off,
I mean, it's a stepping stone, isn't it? I mean, it's not the end goal perhaps is to become a CCIE, or you might not ever go to that, but it right. really enhances your career opportunities, I think, especially in the US, it sounds like.
Yes, it enhances your. I'm not saying that it's going to put you at a level to where you're making six figures or you're this rock star that everybody wants, but at the same time, it will make you stand out. It's a certification that if you not only get the certification, but you actually learn the knowledge and can apply it not only in an interview but on a job, it will make you better, and then you can help mentor other people to improve themselves. So it's kind of like a chain effect, a domino effect that just helps everybody.
I mean, you had an interesting journey because I believe you've now done a degree. So you had CCNA before you had a degree, but now you've gone
Right.
to do a degree. What's the reasons for that? And, why did you decide to get a degree and not just stick with certifications? Can you shed any light on that?
Yes. So the degree was one of those things to where I constantly been in and out of school, and my mom, she didn't have a degree, and I got kids now. And for me, it's like I want to lead by example. I'm the type that leads by example. I'm not really the type to say, "Hey, you need to do this," or
Good way to do it. Yeah.
yeah. So it's like, okay, I got all these credits, and I ran into this recruiter who was helping me. He actually, it's a funny story. I'll get back to that later.
Feel free
But
to tell it if you want.
yeah, so I ran into this recruiter, and actually for the okay, I'll kind of start over. So I ran into this recruiter for the position I have now. Back in May, when I wanted to become a network engineer, I applied for, let's say, I'm tier 2 now, but I applied for a senior role in the same organization, and I bombed that interview. I've never bombed an interview in my life because the question they were asking me were project management based, and that's an area in my career where I've been in a lot of organizations that didn't have proper change control. So to go get into an organization to where they have change control in full effect, and you have to use the proper terminology for project management deliverables and making sure you're meeting these deadlines and fulfilling these obligations, I bombed that interview. The same recruiter calls me back in July, I would say the end of June, and offers me a tier 2 position, which is below the senior position. Well, he offers me an interview for that position. I'm like, well, I just bombed this interview. How can I go back in there and apply for this position? Like, but I'm not a coward. So, I kind of just prayed about it. And I got on the call. I'm like, they're like, your name looks familiar. You've been in here before? And I was like, like, they're like, can anyone tell me what happened in the last interview? And I'm like, yes, sir. I can tell you exactly what happened. The last time I interviewed was for a senior position. And honestly, I wasn't prepared for that position. And I know that my skill set does not meet that position. But at this level, I know that I can come in here, add value to your team, and give you 100% of myself to not only improve myself, but your company and those around me. And I end up getting the position.
Oh, man, that's a great story.
Yeah. So back to what we were talking about. Man, yeah. So I kind of lost track.
I was going to ask you, so why did you get a degree now? Because
Okay.
you had CCNA. But
Yeah.
I mean, the stories like that are fantastic. I love that. Thanks for sharing that. It's really personal, and I think it's fantastic that you I don't know how to say this politely. You were brave enough to go back in there. That's fantastic.
Thank you. It was brave enough, and then it was also a sense of, like I said, my wife had stopped working, and I needed it, so
I
I
mean,
couldn't
that's
I
well
couldn't
done.
back down. Yeah,
Well,
but that recruiter at the time was telling me that I needed to get my degree because it was just one of those things to where I needed to finish, and so that's how I ended up. Because I had talked to him initially, I think it was back in January before I started school, and that's when that whole situation happened where I bombed a degree, to kind of put it all in perspective. So I needed 3 classes. So I ended up taking those classes in January, completing them in May, and then I interviewed for the position again in June, and then that's where I am today. So
you'd actually already started a degree, but you kind of stalled on that, and this gave you the
no,
incentive to continue, is it? Or did I misunderstand?
No. So I was thinking about it, then I talked to him, and I enrolled and got the degree.
So tell me, in the US, because I'm not based in the US, but in the
Right.
US, it sounds like if you want to get your foot in the door for a lot of positions, you need to have a degree. Is that kind of true, or what's your take on that?
It all depends. There's people that make it without a degree, and there's people that don't make it with a degree.
Yeah,
And I think it all depends on you, your location, and your grit. Like, because there'll be times where you want to give up, and at that point could be your breaking point to where you break through.
yeah.
But if you quit, you never know how it's going to turn out. So it's kind of one of those things to where you either have to understand that this is not for you and have self-awareness to know that this isn't the field for you, or you have to have the determination to keep going, no
That's
matter if that opportunity doesn't present itself today or tomorrow.
that's great advice. So just stepping back, because I didn't know if I got the answer to you, and forgive me if I'm pushing you. So why did the
No,
recruiter tell you to get a degree?
we were just having a conversation about my skill set and my certifications and everything. And he was asking me if I had a college degree, and I said no, but I do have a lot of credits, and I'm thinking about getting it. And so he was like, "Well, that thought you need to bring to fruition and go ahead and make it happen, because
Yeah.
can't nobody take a degree from you, and degrees do not expire."
Yeah, it's a great point, because, I mean, certifications do.
Right. And so it just made sense. And like I said, my mom didn't have a degree, and I wanted to set an example for my kids. It just so many variables. It just made sense. So I went ahead and just knocked those classes out, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy.
You were doing Java, I believe. Is that right? I saw you tweeting about
Oh
Java and
man,
stuff.
David, you're pushing.
Am I putting you on the spot here? Sorry, man.
Yeah, you're putting me on the spot.
Okay, well, I can cut
No,
that out if
no,
you like.
no. I don't. It may
I was
help
just I was
someone.
just going to ask you, as a network person, what's your experience of Java? Because I've heard it's terrible. But,
Zero.
Java is horrible.
Okay. Back in 2000, was it last year or the year before? I can't remember. I went to San Francisco for a job interview, and I ended up turning that job down, right?
Oh, wow.
And it kind of bothered me because it was for something I really wanted to do, but it didn't make sense for my family. And becoming a network engineer where I am now has been a journey, because the opportunity that are for the availability of network engineering roles here compared to other places isn't the same.
Yeah.
I would say, and it was kind of discouraging, but there's a lot of developer roles here. So for me, learning Java, my mindset was, I kind of got discouraged, I would say, of being a network engineer. So I figured maybe I'll try development, and maybe I could learn development and help people get into, coding. Yeah, but that didn't really work out because it wasn't fulfilling for me.
I think you chose
It,
the hardest language on earth to try and start with.
but it helped me because in college, I had to take C++. It all made sense because I took Java. So, and then doing Python, Python is just
A breeze, I'm sure.
it's a breeze, but it's not the same. I would think that because I believe Python is object oriented.
It can, yes, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not the same as Java. You can do a lot more in Python with just like one line or two lines. You can print something real easy.
Very easy, yeah.
Yeah, but in Java, you need like 8-10 lines to do the same thing, and yeah, it's no fun.
It's interesting that you say that. I've got a friend of mine in California who I speak to quite a lot, Chuck Black.
Chuck, he's awesome.
Chuck's got like 37 years development experience or something crazy. And he created a Python course. And I was telling him, so Chuck, why don't you create a Java course? And why don't you teach a bit of Java on these calls that we're having for network engineers? And he says, David, no. because Java is like what you said. Like to Python, 3 lines of code, you got something. Java is like totally different nightmare.
Is I would say is no fun. I never enjoy doing it.
I think what's great about Python, though, is Python is very well suited for network automation because it's so simple, so high level. Just with a few lines of code, you can do a lot. So don't lose that experience of dev. I think you can use that to your advantage because now you've got networking and you've got a bit of dev knowledge. I mean, that's a big advantage.
Yeah, and I'm actually slowly working myself into the Python. You know, I'm SSHing into devices, pulling commands, putting them in a folder. I'm doing that now. I would like to be able to do large scripts as far as if we need to do large configurations across multiple switches or routers or whatnot, and also query different interfaces. So I want to dive deeper into it, but it's a journey right now because the environment that I'm in is so large, and I want to definitely learn my role first, and then expand my skill set from there.
Well, let me know if you want access to my Python course.
I already bought it, David.
Great. You shouldn't have bought it. You should have just told me. I would have given it to you.
I know, but I support you, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. But I bought it, and I don't know if your other courses have like how to SSH into devices. I know the one has Telnet.
Yeah.
Do you go deeper in the other ones?
Yeah. So I'll send you a voucher to the new course. Okay. Yeah. So initially we start with Telnet just because some guys would struggle with SSH, but then we dive into NetMiko and Napalm, which allows you to do really cool stuff. It's all SSH later on, and we also use multiple threads or processes to speed things up because it can be slow doing it, synchronously. You want to do everything in parallel. So yeah, I mean, I'll send you a coupon after the call.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if you have the time, go a bit further, and you can. Telnet is just the initial part. Later on, we get into full SSH and much better stuff.
Okay, yeah, I would love, because what I'm trying to learn now, and I actually work with a guy. He's the lead, and the guy is really smart. He's from Holland. The guy's really smart. he scripts a lot in Python, and so looking at some of his scripts, because I was trying to figure out how do you write your Python script without entering your password in the script.
Yeah, it's in the course if you want it.
Okay, awesome. Then see, you the man, David.
No, I'm not. But I mean, what you've said it 3 or 4 times now, which is really interesting. You said, I know a guy, or I worked with a guy who was this good, or was like a rock star. And I think the lesson to learn there is try and get into a team where someone knows much more than you do, and try and shadow them as much as you can. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with that. It's one of those things to where you have to have a balance of asking the right questions and researching for yourself.
Yeah.
But not wasting time researching for yourself. You know what I mean? And not wasting their time either asking the same questions. So you really have to learn how to build that relationship to be able to ask the right question directly without too many words to be able to get the answer you want, and then being able to apply it to your notes or wherever you need to, so you don't have to ask it again.
Yeah, it's good advice, that, because I mean, I get asked things all the time, and it's like, guys, don't just ask me silly questions. That's why you've got Google.
That's why you got Google. We need to make a video to where
can I Google that for you?
Yeah.
So tell me about Lab Every Day, because you're famous for that as well. So how did that start? What is it? Because people might not know what that is.
Lab Every Day is a journey. First and foremost, it's a journey. It's not something to where, you're just in the lab every day on your Cisco hardware or software, whatever, virtualized, however you want to do it. But it's about the journey, working towards it every day, whether it's reading a book, studying notes, working with your mentors, with taking a course, whatever. But it's just doing the little things every day to get to where you want to be. That's pretty much all it is.
But I mean, you're very humble. I mean, from what I've seen, it's a lot bigger than that. It's like a community of people helping
Oh
each
yeah,
other and encouraging each other. I see a lot of lab every day messages. You tweet all the time. I
right.
think every day, encouraging people to do things and stick with the journey. And, a lot of other people help one another. Is that right?
Oh yeah. Now, if we talk about the community, that's a whole nother thing because the community is what drives it. Especially, I've been offline for about over a month or two, and the community is still going strong. I mean, there's so many people that are striving to improve their lives, and they're willing to help,
So
and
can
they're
you
willing to
how
help.
does someone get involved? Can you sort of like if I want to join lab every day, how do I do that?
I'll send you a link to the Slack group to where a lot of people are in there just communicating and helping each other. And then also on Twitter, just hashtag lab every day, or Instagram hashtag lab every day, maybe even Facebook. I'm not on Facebook, but just hop on the social media, hit the hashtag, and you'll see people posting and
So
connect with them.
can you give me the link so I can post on this video, or do they have to email you for it? Not now, but later. I'll post it on
Yes.
later. Is that okay?
Yes, I'm gonna send it to you. I'm gonna
Great,
send it to you.
great. Yes, I'll post it on the below the video. So if anyone wants to join the Slack group, they can just use that link, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Great. Yes, Your Royal Highness.
Yes, David.
So that's exciting. I mean, the lab every day. How big is the Slack group, by the way? Do you have any like statistics? How many people are involved?
The last time I checked, it was over 160 people. I'm
Wow.
not sure. I'm not sure now because, like I said, I've been offline for over a month and a half, and not put this in the recording, but I'm not big on like social media as you think.
Oh, I
You
think
know
you're a
what
big social media fan.
I mean? No, I'm not. I mainly just post and get off. I don't really look through feeds. I don't really look through messages because my time is very valuable.
Yeah.
If I do, I just check real quick. If somebody send me a message, I reply. But I'm working to do better at communicating with the community. You know what I mean? Because I know people do want you to do that, but for me, I got 3 kids, I got a wife, I got a job, I got a business outside of just YouTube and everything I do. I consult. So there's so much that I do, and social media just there's too much on social media to really be in it like that for me.
So that's a really good point. So let's talk about that if you don't mind. What are your
Okay.
tips for time management? What are your tips for getting more done in the 24 hours you have every day?
I'll just tell you real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
I keep things like these,
Yep.
and I keep them clipped up. And every day I write down what I need to do for that day and what I didn't do yesterday. And I prioritize what's important to be done. And so the least important thing goes to the bottom. The most important things goes to the top. And shout out to my boy Jorgen. He's from Denmark, he's from Denmark, and he actually kind of gave me that structure to where, all right, the most important thing has to go down on the list at the top, which I already knew that. But if it's not written down, you kind of just put it in your mind, and you may do it and you may not. And so now I use my calendar. I bought an Apple Watch, so I kind of try to be as consistent as possible with my time management, my scheduling, and making sure I put my family first, God first, getting prayer in, and all that stuff. So
Yeah, I mean, that's really good. So just the brief overview is it's like a
yeah,
weekly calendar, and then you write like every day the 5 top tasks that you need to do or something like that, or
yeah. There's 5 tabs that I actually put on it, and then once I have my top task, that goes at the top, and then whatever I don't do the next day, it goes to the top of the next day. That, you know what I mean? It's kind of like a rotating list that just
yeah.
keeps going. But my goals is a whole separate thing. I do 3 months goals that kind of feeds into my priorities. So everything is like a building block to get to that, let's say, 5-year goal. And I'm constantly every day, along with my prayer, reevaluating who I am and my plan to make sure, all right, this day I dropped the ball in this area. Let me make sure I spend some time with my son. All right, I dropped the ball yesterday with my daughter. Let me spend some time with her today. Just little things like that. I dropped the ball with my wife. Let me make sure that I send her some flowers and make some time for her. Just kind of balance it all, because one of the things I learned about YouTube is that if you are out to help people, you have to help yourself first.
Yeah.
and the people that love you and support you the most are the ones you have to give the most support and, attention to, because without them, there is no me.
That's great advice. Yeah, I mean, you can get so focused on the goals and the accomplishments that you lose the most important things in life.
Right.
I've known a lot of guys who perhaps have money, but if they lose their family, well, what do they have? They get lost.
Yeah. Yeah. We see it. Some things happen in life you can't control, but the things you can control, you have to control.
Yeah. So
and that's yourself.
Yeah, it's a good point. So you discipline yourself. You try and every day make sure that you allocate time to the important things, not just the urgent things.
Right. Exactly. The important things are definitely, the family's always first, and then the relationships with the people that I'm building relationships with, friends, mentors. I make sure that I set aside some time to just say, hey, check on them as well, because when people are busy, they don't have time to check on you, but it's cool to just touch base with them. It's not mean that they don't care about a relationship with you. It just means that they are tending to their family,
Yeah. So one of the things you've mentioned is you're not really you don't spend a lot of time on social media. You use it and you perhaps allocate specific time to it, but you don't spend like the whole day scrolling through Facebook and stuff like that. Have you got any other tips? So let's say I'm a young guy and I want to learn, become CCNA and perhaps become a CCIE one day. Any other time management tips or just tips about life that you can give me?
Yeah. So one of the things I did, like my YouTube channel, when I'm on YouTube, I only follow people that's going to improve myself. Any entertainment, I don't really follow that, because I can always search for that.
Yeah.
But to see it, especially with all the algorithms that are out there, you'll find yourself doing things if you're not self-aware, and time is just wasted.
Yeah.
So you really have to monitor who you follow, what you follow, and what you put in your life and who you bring into your life. And so I'm really diligent about who I bring into my inner circle, the things that I do, the things that I watch, things that I read, because your mind, if you don't control it, will go somewhere you don't want it to be if you're not self-aware. So I do my best to be as self-aware as possible.
Yeah. So in other words, you're very careful with what you read, what you consume, where you spend time. You try and focus your energy in the time you have on what's important.
Right, on what's important. And if somebody comes to me and needs help and they contact me directly, I do my best to help them the first time, to make sure that I'm listening to what they need, and then give them if I can help them, I help them.
Yeah.
If I can't, I help point them in the right direction. When I first started YouTube, I was trying to help and solve everyone's problems. And I realized quickly that
can't do that.
You'll become somebody. You'll become somebody you don't want to be if you're constantly trying to fix everybody else's problems.
So that leads me to my next question. Why did you start your YouTube channel?
Yeah, I started my YouTube channel because when I first started my CCNA journey, there wasn't nobody that looked like me on YouTube. And I felt the best way for me to get back is to give back, start just talking about my journey and talking about labbing, and that's about it.
Yeah, so I mean, we spoke about this offline. Your aim with your YouTube channel is basically to give back and to give to the community, if I understand it right. Is that
that's my only aim. I'm not looking for fame. I'm really. It's cool to get subscribers. In the beginning, I wanted to reach certain goals, but I don't know how to goals anymore. I've reached all the goals that I set out to reach. Now I want to help people more directly and intentionally, because when I was smaller, I could build relationships with people one-on-one and help people. But now that my channel's grown to a point to where I can't help everybody directly, I have to be more focused on helping the whole rather than the individual.
That's brilliant. Dewan, that's fantastic. So let's talk a bit about the future. So you've just got this new position, which is, again, congratulations. Where do you see yourself going? So do you have you spoke a bit about, you set 3-month goals. Do you have any goals for like the next year, 5 years, 10 years? Where do you see yourself going?
Right now, I would like to learn as much as I can in my current position. I'm in the process of taking over a project for migrating remote sites to 2x2s, 3x2s, which is multiple T1s, because they can't get Ethernet, so they need more bandwidth for their sites or whatnot. So I want to do as well as I can in that position.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I want to learn more about Cisco Ice. So with that being said, I want to get my CCNA security certification. So I'm really focused on that area of learning that knowledge, which I'm doing pretty good on that. And then maybe taking the CCNP security, depending on if it makes more sense to get the CCIE. So my goal is, as far as certification, not as far as job wise, I do desire to be a senior network engineer, which I know I can do that.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
but that's going to take me just being able to manage projects and doing everything that I need to do, troubleshooting wise, and like I said, managing projects and being able to do that.
So just for people who don't know, what is Cisco Ice?
Cisco Ice. Cisco Ice is basically a management system. I don't want to say management system, but it's a security solution for your endpoints in your network. Your endpoints and your router switches, you can do TACAX and radius .1x authentication for your network. So let's say it's your authenticating server in your network. So
Okay.
it talks to your Windows Active Directory to say, okay, this person can be authenticated in the network. And then it also can do TACAX management for your switches and your routers to be able to say, okay, this network engineer can have access into this network.
That's great. And then, I mean, you mentioned it earlier. So it's interesting. You worked with SolarWinds as well. So
Right.
what kind of SolarWinds products have you worked with?
SolarWinds, as far as the network management, is the main tool resource that I have used. So being able to go into SolarWinds and say, all right, this router's down, being able to monitor the interfaces, monitor the servers, the ESX servers, to say, okay, this server is running out of resources. We need to add more RAM to this device. Let's put more RAM into this device. This site is down. Let's troubleshoot that link. Or this link is reaching full capacity. Why is it reaching full capacity? Okay, now let's push out some configs, or let's poll this device to see what's actually going on with SNMP. So
which SolarWinds products would you recommend, if any?
Yeah, NPM. I would say if you have the opportunity and you have a server at home, a virtual server, download it and just install it and start from there. And then you can add other tools on top of that. But I was, excuse me, I would start there with just doing like a SQL Express install and learning how it works. Doing your SNMP to be able to pull your devices. And I believe you can actually do that in GNS3. Am I
Yeah,
correct?
you can. Yeah, you can.
Yeah, so you can actually do it in GNS3. Just being able to set up your monitor in the GNS3 and seeing how you poll and send traps and all that good stuff.
So this is interesting because for a lot of network engineers, when they take the Cisco courses, there's not a large emphasis on network management. I mean, there's some in the CCNA, but I wouldn't say it's like a big emphasis. But you've had a lot of experience with SolarWinds and other products doing network management type stuff. So how important would you say it is to have SNMP or something like that to manage a network in production?
Yeah, so SolarWinds, I believe, can only do SNMP version 2. So being able to understand that and being able to set that up is valuable. Your logs, all that is valuable information that you can use to improve your network and understand what's actually going on in your network. And being able to configure it, a lot of times those configs will already be there, but don't be the person to just copy a script. Know what the script actually does that you're copying into your devices. Because if you want to be that senior network engineer, you may have to take a site and figure out a better QoS for that site. Because the QoS could be wrong, and if you're the person that can say, okay, we can actually divide this up better to where the site actually can have the high available or the high demand applications to give them more resources than take the standard internet connection down. So that's something you need to do if you want to be that senior network engineer.
So that leads me to my next question. Which areas would you recommend someone focus on, should I say, for now and then for the future? Are there any specific topics or technologies that you would recommend?
I would say focus on where you are now. Find out how you can do where you are now the best. And then see what's available. If you have access to the firewall and you're interested in the firewall, start looking at those access lists and seeing how everything works, and then maybe get your CCNA security. If you have access to Cisco Prime and you're interested in wireless, learn how Cisco Prime works. And if you're able to get in the controller, log into the controller, learn how that works, learn Flex Connect, learn just everything about configuring APs, which is pretty simple, and go from there. Find your area of interest, focus on that, and just build on that. See what opportunities are around once you master the position that you're in.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, a lot of people, what's the term some guys use? They say they're waiting for all the lights to be green before they do something. Right. And life doesn't work like that. I like what you just said. Use the position you're at as much as you can. So look around yourself and try and make your own opportunities, kind of thing. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because it may not be the job that you feel like you deserve or you should be in, but at the same time, if you don't leave a good mark where you are, your time there was wasted.
Yeah.
No matter what the position is, if you leave your mark and you can use that manager as a reference and everybody speaks good about you and you done your job and you done everything you needed to do, that will benefit you in the long run. Although it may not be where you want to be, don't treat it like it's not where you want to be. That's just my advice.
It's great advice. I mean, it's a journey, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely a journey.
So, Dewan, you have been sharing with thousands of people, strategies, tips and tricks for preparing for the CCNA, like books to use, simulations to use, home lab, GNS3, packet tracer, etc., etc. Can you give us some tips in this call about what would you recommend? What tools, technologies, etc. should people use to help them for CCNA prep?
Where do we begin?
Yeah, we can go for another 3 hours.
No, but seriously, I say we begin at the Xen topics.
Okay.
I believe everything on Cisco has to start there.
Yeah.
And from there, of course, you can join the Lab Everyday group. You can follow David Bumble, but the Cisco Learning Network, I believe, is another great resource to where you can find interesting questions about the exam topics, and then also people sharing their certification journey on that platform. So I do admire that platform. The next thing, books, the OCG books, when they're older, those books are pretty good. Of course, your course is GNS3 and Packet Tracer. You have Packet Tracer. So Packet Tracer and GNS3, David Bumble will get you squared away, and he's very professional. And it's going to be...
You mustn't push my stuff. You must say your stuff sucks. There's better stuff out there.
No, not even to say that, but there's so many resources out there. There's something for you.
Yeah, exactly.
If you don't like following my YouTube channel, there's Network Chuck. If you don't like Chuck, there's Jeremy. If you don't like him, there's David. There's so many different resources to help you get to where you want to be. You don't have to stay in one lane, and nobody's going to feel bad about you buying someone else's course. We're just here to help.
That's such a great thing to say, because I think we were talking about it as well earlier, that the Cisco network community seems to be very much unlike any other network or other community. Everyone's willing to help one another, and I think that's a really cool thing about this community.
Definitely. Now, on top of that, and I think this question is more for you than it is for me. I've always been the type to have a home lab, but I kind of taken a step back and looking at technology and what you really need to learn. And it's kind of impossible to build an MPLS at home and have a network, as far, so that's kind of hard to do. So what are your thoughts on moving forward for a lab?
Yeah, so I would recommend if you brand new to Cisco, get Packet Tracer. So like CCNA, you can do the whole CCNA with Packet Tracer. Packet Tracer is free. It's it's easy to use. It's got bugs, which is a problem. It's not the real thing, so it has issues, but it's a great way to get started, and it's free. I mean, that's very important for a lot of people.
Right.
But as you move to CCNP and perhaps you for CCNA security, you probably want to get into GNS3 or Cisco Viral. GNS3 I'm a big supporter of, big fan of, because of all the things you can do with GNS3. And with viral images, so you have to buy these images. You can load them into GNS3 and you can do almost anything. A lot of people still under the misconception that you can't do a whole bunch of stuff with GNS3, but you can. The stuff that you can't do is very small now. You can do almost anything. But I think if you're brand new, we both interviewed Michael Hilton a while ago, 14-year-old who got his CCNA. And what he did, which I think is really clever, is he used all those tools, or both those tools, but he also got a home lab, just a few devices, so that he could see how the network physically works. Because it happens a lot. You might interview a guy or you might meet a guy, and he did all his courses remotely or with simulations, and he doesn't recognize the device right in front of him. That's the actual device that he should configure. So you don't want to be that guy. You want to know what what a cable looks like, how to connect it, that kind of stuff. So I think once you've got the basics of cabling and basics of how devices work, then you go virtual. Especially these days. When I started my CCIE journey, we had only physical. There wasn't a virtualization platform. But these days, everything's virtual. So you can, I think, do the physical cabling initially, like cable your own home network, or do something small at home, so that you know how it physically works. You can't learn to cable a network through Packet Tracer. You got to do it. But after that, I would just go GNS3. After CCNA level, go GNS3. Because GNS3 can do almost anything. So MPLS, no problem. Just name a technology, and I'm struggling to find stuff that GNS3 can't do these days. Go on.
You can do .1x?
Yep.
Okay. There you go.
I think that's right, yeah. So iOS V layer 2 switches from Viral support .1x. I'll put a link here. I'll just update, put something on the video if that's not true. But as far as I know, that is true, yeah. So what happened recently is GNS3 released Docker containers that are TACACS and Radius servers. So you just literally pull a little device into your GNS3 topology, and you get Docker TACACS Radius servers. So you don't need to get ICE or some huge management platform. You literally just pull the device into your network, and it downloads the operating system, boots it up, and you've got a TACACS and Radius server.
I'm gonna have to upgrade my GNS3.
Yeah, Docker's really made a difference. So Docker, there's another Docker container that's great as well, which it's one of the GNS3 community guys that made it. So Undrush is his name. He's a great guy. So the same thing about the community, guys helping one another. Undrush created this in his spare time, and it's a network toolset, or toolkit he calls it. It's got DHCP, DNS, SNMP server, syslog, a few other things, all on a Docker container. So you just pull that into your GNS3 topology. You got all of that already. If you want to do full-blown stuff, then you get NPM or something like that into your network. But if you just want a basic server for your lab, it's so easy these days. So yeah, I'm struggling to find stuff that GNS3 can't do.
Yeah, that's kind of like the server in Packet Tracer. You can do all that in Packet Tracer. I don't think you can do TACACS, but you can do Radius.
You can do both now.
Oh, you can do both now? Okay.
But
Packet Tracer is even advancing.
Yeah, I mean, I just saw they released 7.2 a few days ago, and that supports even more stuff. So the Packet Tracer is good. It's a great way to get started, but it's not real. That's the way to put it. Just whereas GNS3 gets you 98% of the way there.
Right. You made a great point about the getting the devices at home, and that was kind of my thinking. Get a switch to be able to understand port security and understand how, what happens when you plug in mismatched duplexes or mismatched speeds between a computer and a switch. Being able to check the interface, see what happens, and then maybe even getting a router to be able to configure a trunk and see how it works and sub interfaces and all that, and just go from there. But as far as building the actual home lab, it's fun. But when I actually got my CCNP, I had a home lab, but I used GNS3 on the go. So I was, wherever I went, I had my laptop and I was labbing in GNS3, watching your videos actually.
Thanks.
On YouTube. You helped me set that up, and from there, along with CBT Nuggets, I just lab.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the advantage of virtualization technologies, is you can just take them anywhere. I mean, you've got a laptop. These days, the laptops are generally powerful enough. You know, you don't need some huge lab. You can spin up, it just depends on your computer resources, but you could spin up 20 routers in GNS3 and run MPLS and a whole bunch of other stuff. It just depends on how fast your PC is.
Yeah, my lab, my CCIE lab and my GNS3 right now has 30 routers.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, it's been a journey, but I'm learning. So I need to get more to MPLS in there though.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to plug it, but I'll put a link here. I've got some free MPLS videos on YouTube if anyone wants to watch it. Takes you basically how to set up basic MPLS and layer 3 VPNs. And it's just a playlist of MPLS videos.
Thank you.
So if you watch those videos, you'll have MPLS. MPLS sounds very complicated, but it's not.
No, it's not. It's not.
So which sections of the CCNA do you think most people struggle with, and what advice would you have for them to get through those areas?
I think IPv6 is safe to say an area that just seems overwhelming, and it's always been like that, but it's really not that complicated because you don't really have to learn subnetting in IPv6. You know, just kind of take what you learn from IPv4. Remember that it's 32 bits and all that good stuff, and now you're dealing with 128 bits. And go from there. You know, you don't really have to apply the same way of thinking with IPv6 as you do with IPv4.
It's a great point. I mean, I think the scary thing is just those long addresses. But once you get over those, it's not that bad.
Yeah, and start creating your own addresses and name them some cool stuff. You know, and then you'll kind of get used to it. If you start naming it cool stuff that you can think of, you know, like dad or something for a network.
Face,
you know?
babe, yeah.
Right. And make it fun. And maybe that'll make it more interesting for you to learn it. So
that's a good point. And what about subnetting? I've had guys say that subnetting is a big one. Do you get a lot of questions about subnetting, like IP version 4 subnetting?
Yeah, I do. And I actually have some videos on subnetting, and people say it helped. But for me, the first thing I remember was the different, like the 32, how many hosts and how many how many hosts and everything that's in 32/32/30, and break it all the way down to, I would say, about a 16. You really don't have to go further than that. And then understanding the subnet mask and the purpose of a subnet mask, and then the network side and the host side, and understanding the two differences, and then just go from there and realize that you're always going to have the host, and the network ID, and then you're always going to have a broadcast in your subnet, you know, unless you're dealing with ISP, because I heard ISPs can actually use a /31.
Yeah, so all Cisco gear supports it now.
Okay.
So if you have a point-to-point link, you can do /31s.
Right.
Get rid of the broadcast. Yeah, you don't need it because it's point-to-point.
Yeah. So, yeah. Other than that, just break it down, draw a picture, draw a table. Like when you're doing your CCNA, just write that down. Write it down. Okay, /32. You don't have, you know, it's just one ID. The /31. There's 2. /30 there's 4, but there's only 2 hosts. And just kind of write it down from there, and then go from there. And then if you actually need the subnet, you know, do the binary to decimal. Understand that, and you should be good.
Yeah, we'll link those videos as well. So I'll put if you can send me the link to your subnetting videos, I think this call is going to have many, many videos to link. I'll just put a whole bunch of links below the video. You were just telling me something offline about boxing. Do you want to share that with everyone?
Yes. So IT, to me, we were talking about experience and how much experience I have in IT. And I'm feeling like I need more experience. But I look at IT sort of like boxing and any sport. You'll have some guys that are great in high school, great at, let's say, amateur, let's say boxing, like Freddie Roach. Great amateur boxer, but never quite made it as a professional fighter. But from his experience, he became a great trainer, a Hall of Fame trainer. You know, and that's kind of how I look at IT. Like, everybody in IT isn't going to be this senior great person, but they can always, or they can use that experience to help someone else, or they can carry it over into another field or their afterlife, after technology. You know, it's just a journey. And that's kind of how I look at my journey. I've been in it this long, and I'm not sure if I'll reach that senior network engineer position, but either way, I know that it's going to help me to do something greater. And maybe YouTube is that greater to help somebody else get to that senior network engineer or that networking executive, whatever they want to be, architect. I'm just doing my best to, you know, do my best on my own journey, you know?
I mean, it's a fantastic, and I think I'll just wrap up with this. I think the great thing about technology is, great thing and bad thing, I suppose, but the great thing for new guys is I'm very experienced. I know ISDN. How does that help us? I know token ring. So how does that help us? I remember when I was starting out, I used to seriously program Cisco routers with modems. And I used to have two routers, and they would call each other through an analog modem and send data across, and I would listen to the modem and make sure that it was making the right sounds. And how does that help us today? It doesn't. So the point is, if you knew, I think guys get hung up on experience. The great thing about IT is what was great 10 years ago is irrelevant today. If you get on the hot new stuff, within 2 years, you can be one of the, I shouldn't say the most experienced, but you can be quite experienced in a new technology. So I wouldn't look at, I need 5 years or 10 years or 20 years of experience, because let's be honest, what was important 5 years ago isn't important today, and what's important today won't be important 5 years from today. Things change all the time, so just jump in there and go for it. Don't always think that you need lots and lots of experience. But now I'm mumbling, so with that, Dewan, I want to thank you so much for spending so much time with me and sharing your thoughts and your journey. I really, really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, David. Thank you. It's been great. Thank you.
And because you called me sir again, I want to thank you, Your Royal Highness, for spending this time with me. Have a great day.
Yes, sir.